I'm still joined by Dream Hampton from Skype in the United States and Mbuyielo Botha in our Pretoria studios. Dream, you've spoken about this whataboutism. There's been also quite a backlash about this documentary, speaking about the fact that R. Kelly is being torn down because he's a powerful black artist. And people also saying he's a victim, so perhaps there should be more empathy for him and the things that these women are speaking about in the documentary.
I have never talked about R. Kelly, and in this documentary, we begin by talking about his own abuse. At 52, though, we have to look to him. And at 27, when he married Aaliyah and had to have it quickly annulled, I wish that the people around him, I wish that he himself had looked for help. I know that help in trauma is not a straight line, and it's not always that easy. But at this point, he is responsible for the dozens and dozens of black women and girls that he's abused. And when it came to this question of whataboutism, I do believe that, and this question of he's a black man being torn down, I've seen the word, he himself used the word lynching, which is a gross misuse of a language that means something very specific here in America historically. But, you know, when we talk about tearing down a black man, it is actually the love and the support of the black community that has been both a currency and protection for R. Kelly for decades, you know? So it has been, in addition to all of the things we talked about before, the whataboutism, and I don't know anyone who's as egregious as him. Yes, do I know men in this industry, in my own life, who have been abusive to women, who have only preyed on young girls or only dated young girls? Of course I do. Do I know anyone who for the past almost 3 decades has systemically created an ecosystem around this, who refuses women movement, food, contact with their parents, like a sex trafficking ring, and has this amount of celebrity and visibility? No, I don't. I do know men in the business who have behaved awfully, just like I know men in my own life who have behaved awfully. But R. Kelly is uniquely our problem. He's not a crossover artist. You can argue that he made 1 crossover hit, maybe 2. But for the most part, he is Black Americans' problem. Black people throughout the diaspora love his kind of R&B. It's very authentic. When black men turned away from R&B for hip hop, R. Kelly was the only person they still rode with. And no, it was time to deal with him. It just was. There are 2 sets of parents looking for their daughters who were disappeared at 17 and 19 respectively, and who they've not been allowed to speak with for almost 3 years. Mm-hmm. As he goes around and makes public appearances and pretends to be kind of a normal person. And so if this forces him into the help that he needs, then perhaps he'll finally, as a victim, get that help he needs.
Mm-hmm. Mbuyielo, there's a refrain when this documentary is spoken about, when R. Kelly is spoken about, that there should be a separation of talent and a person's deed. And especially in the South African context, we've seen that with people grappling with whether they should ask, I can think of an example, the public broadcaster to not play R. Kelly's music because of these allegations and because of what these women have been saying.
Yeah. Well, I think, Nzinga, it's important for us to, as a country, to say that there must be consequences. And one of the best ways to deal it is that how do we then hit someone where it matters most, in the pocket, but also when there's a decision which is conscious that let's not play the music. Well, what we are doing is that it's a symbolic manner of saying that we will not tolerate any form of violence, and there will not be icons, because if we don't take action, we are sending a message that, look, when you are a celebrity or when you are earning high earner, you'll be treated differently. So it's important for us as a country to say that there must always be consequences, because if we don't, there's going to be this level of impunity.
Do we take abuse, particularly towards women, seriously in South Africa, besides having a month where people put it in the spotlight? Are we taking it seriously enough?
Well, I think we're seeing, look, let me give an example. I mean, I think, and I must say this up front, that for the first time in our history, 25 years, I mean, a sitting president calls for members of the ANC at a manifesto launch to say that he asked all men to stand up. I mean, that is historic in the sense that it has never happened. I mean, from President Mandela, President Mbeki, President Zuma, now President Ramaphosa says, I would like men as a sign that these men in South Africa don't support violence against women. That for me is important. But second, having said that, again, the president, acceded to a request for the gender summit that was held with the total shutdown, and then that that's a step in the right direction. Well, Nzenga, we still have lots of challenges. We still have problems in that there are these disjointed initiatives. But I sit here with you this evening and your viewers and say that as a country, I don't think that all is lost. All we need to do is ensure that what was discussed and agreed at that summit, there's a momentum, and the president is continuously going to be held accountable to say, these are things that, President, you have promised us. Where are we? How far are we? So that we don't just turn these things into a talk shop.
Mm-hmm. Dream, talk to us about the response that's come after this documentary from a law enforcement perspective, from that black community that you've been speaking about in the States.
Well, yes. I mean, and I'd like to also go back to this question of like separating the art from the artist and this idea of punishment. And I loved what the doctor said about him operating with impunity if there aren't kind of grassroots movements and actions, which is what Mute R. Kelly is. Also, there's this issue of his music being about his predation. Songs like Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, Seems Like You're Ready, We Learn are exactly about what he does in his real life. So there's this moment where the art and the artist are inseparable. The other thing is that as an 11-year-old, quite frankly, when Winnie Mandela was touring the States and Europe trying to raise awareness about the ANC and calling for boycott, divestment, and sanctions, that's how I became political. So I learned from South Africans that boycott, divestment, and sanctions are a way to change the reality on the ground, the politics, and in this case, the culture. So I think that what Mute R. Kelly, and I'm not one of the founders of that, or Nika and Kenyatta are, what they did was brilliant. They, as the doctor said, targeted his pockets, which is how he's able, by the way, to move women and girls across state lines where their parents can't find them. Part of that is from the money that we put in his pockets by streaming his music, by going to his concerts. So that's why I think that the Mute R. Kelly calls for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions is an honorable one, and one in the tradition that I was taught from South Africa that we've used many times in many instances before. What else is happening is that there have been two calls by prosecutors and DAs in Georgia and in Illinois for other victims of his to come forward. And I hope that some of the women who we talked to when we were in pre-production on Surviving R. Kelly, who didn't want to come on camera, who didn't want to open themselves up to be dismissed, disbelieved, dragged, doxxed in some instances, those women who did not go on camera, I hope that they do listen to Kim Fox in Chicago, a prosecutor, by the way, that local activists, people like Assata's daughter and BYP 100, basically got in office by getting rid of the DA before her, who wasn't responsible to black people, and like so much in the legal system, do not care about black girls here in America, do not care about black girls and black women.
Mm-hmm. Thanks both so much for your time. Dream Hampton joining me from the United States on Skype. Mbuyielo Botha joining us from our Pretoria studios. We're discussing the documentary Surviving R. Kelly and the nature of abuse in South Africa. Thanks both so much for your time.